everybody. My name is Distinguished Toastmaster Titioju. Now, have you ever heard about this book titled Common Mistakes in English? I'm sure some of you have read that book. What do you think the author was aiming at? The author made a deliberate attempt to correct age-long mistakes in the English language that have become part of regular vocabulary. It was important that that writer pressed pause to help us rethink what we're getting right and what we're getting wrong. So today, I'm also standing in that capacity because I also see making common mistakes. There are mistakes that are being replicated every now and then in our meetings, and it's high time I would address them. So maybe I should title this session, Common Mistakes in Toastmasters Meetings, or should I say, Common Mistakes that Role Players Make. And I'm going to make reference to 3 role players. I'm talking about these three role players because I have attended meetings and I've seen how they play their roles, and they have not played it really well. And I've seen people replicate the same thing over and over again. So it's just important that we talk about it. The very first role is the role of the evaluator. Now, what is the role of the evaluator? The evaluator, of course, gives feedback to a speaker. It could be a speaker during the table topics or someone that had presented a prepared speech. Now we know this in Toastmasters that our feedback formula is CRC, which is commend, recommend, and commend again. So as an evaluator as well, when you come forward to evaluate a speech, you are to highlight the things that you feel the speaker has done very well. You are to highlight that because that's the learning curve for both the speaker and the audience. And then, of course, you go on to cite areas where you think this speaker can improve. Definitely, when you also give that report, both the speaker and the audience will be learning through that evaluation process. Of course, in Toastmasters, we learn through feedback and we need to do it well. But what is the mistake I have seen? I see an evaluator come forward and is almost repeating the entire speech that the speaker had given. As a speaker, let me give you an example. Said, oh, that was a nice speech, Toastmaster Damilare. Toastmaster Damilare, you told us you were born in 1924. You also made us understand that on the night of your birth, there was a heavy rain. Then you went on to tell us that that night your mother carried you and put you in a basket. And she took you to the River Nile and dropped you there as if you were baby Moses. And then you went on to tell us, for crying out loud, you don't, as an evaluator, no. You're more or less repeating the entire speech, and that is not right. The evaluator is to come forward. If you want to stand by the CRC rule, then do so. Commend, recommend, and commend again. Or give feedback, and your commendation should talk about what the person has done and highlight it. And then if you feel it needs areas to improve, that is where the recommendations come in. And of course, you commend again before you leave the stage. Please, I think it's time we get that right. That is not about repeating an entire speech. First, evaluators are timed. If you don't dedicate time to doing evaluation well, you will spend more time repeating a speech. And the real lessons that we're to take away is taken away from us because now you have to manage the last 30 seconds or the last 1 minute out of 3 minutes to quickly now tell us what is the highlight and what are the areas where the speaker needs to improve. So please, let's take note about that. The second role I'll be talking about is the general evaluator. And I have to talk about this because once or twice or even 3 times, even 4 times or even more, I've had members of Toastmasters ask me this question. Of course, recently, someone also came up and asked. He was actually surprised at the way the general evaluator evaluated the meeting. And what was surprising was this. The general evaluator ended up evaluating the speeches that had been evaluated before. Now, this Toastmaster actually evaluated a speech or 2, he evaluated 2 speeches. And when the GE came forward, that means the general evaluator came forward to give his own report of the meeting, he evaluated every speech all over again, repeating what the evaluator had clearly stated when that evaluator came forward earlier to evaluate the same speech. Excuse me, that is not your role, GE. General evaluator. Of course, if you look in that document, a Toastmaster wears many hats. You evaluate your evaluators, not the speech they have evaluated. And in evaluating your evaluators, what you're expected to do is probably to pick up the things they probably missed and were obvious to you that you needed to reiterate them or bring them forward so that we have a more robust evaluation that day. And that's just a little piece of what you're expected to do. Of course, we know how the role goes. We evaluate the meeting, we evaluate our conduct and all of that. But please, your role is not to come out and evaluate every little speech that's been evaluated before. Two things that you pass across to your audience. And to the person that evaluated, that person may feel that maybe you didn't do it well enough, and that's why you came forward to repeat it again. And if you're not careful, your evaluator leaves feeling bad. Secondly, you are giving your audience pain, and I mean pain in their ears, because we're hearing it all over again. Please don't bore us. Enough of telling you. The last role I'll be talking about is the R-counter role. The R-counter is to, yes, check us for the pause fillers, inappropriately used words. Some words can be used repeatedly in our sentences and somehow it just loses the value. Now, I can give you a very good example. An R-counter comes forward and then in his report, he says that somebody used the word and once. And ends up becoming a pause filler, just being used once within 3 sentences. Excuse me. Now, this is what it is. If you come forward and tell me that I have used a particular word inappropriately, it's also important to cite how that word was used inappropriately, or else you would have lost the entire message. The R-counter report is not just about coming forward and reading the statistics of those that used words, or the words how they were used. No, you are expected to tell us how they were used if you feel they were used inappropriately. And let me also mention this. For you to use so inappropriately, then you must have used it more times than not, than required in a sentence. Not when I use so. For example, let me give you a sentence like, I woke up this morning with a headache. And so, I opened my shelf and I brought out Panadol. I took it and went to bed. Now, so has been used appropriately in that sentence. But I have seen R-counters putting just that sentence as it sounds, so became part of their report because they felt it was a pause filler. Now, don't you forget that so is a word in the English dictionary. The same with and. We see those that use and almost all the time. And I went to and, I took something from the shelf and, of course, when and is repeated too many times and start every sentence or after every comma you use and, yes, then hand in that context can be counted as a pause filler or an inappropriately used word. But if I use hand in this context, I went to the park and I saw my friend, Titi. Titi and I have known each other for the past 20 years. Titi and her kids were there. I was surprised. I ran and I hugged our daughter. Now, look at that sentence. Have I used and inappropriately? No. Now, can you see how I've compared those two sentences? But I've noticed that some of our R-counters, once they hear and, they just write it down. It is written down, whether used appropriately or not. This has to stop because that evaluation is like that book I mentioned to you earlier, Common Mistakes in English. Now we can call this Common Mistakes in Toastmasters meetings. Common mistakes that role players make. And I think it's important that I like this in this video so that we can also understand how to play the roles appropriately. I have mentioned to you that you should pick up that document, A Toastmaster Wears Many Hats. If you do that, you will get to understand this even much better. That document says that hand, so, you know, yes, there are words in the English dictionary, but it's quite, there are words that we misuse. That's what it means. It's not saying that they are the words, they are the pause fillers or the crutches. No, it didn't say that. That document only says those words are the words that we misuse. So the only time I should find that, we should find that in your report, is when those words are misused, not when they come up. It's only when they're misused that you put that in your report. Accountants, please take note.